Have you ever wondered how it's possible for one single artist to make millions of people feel intense anger, overwhelming guilt, deep sadness, and physical tension, literally all within just a few minutes of music? Think about that for a second. You press play, and almost immediately your brain is hijacked by this incredibly potent emotional cocktail. In this explainer, we're going to deconstruct exactly how this works, because the psychology behind Eminem's most powerful songs is genuinely fascinating. His tracks aren't just powerful for one single reason. They're absolute masterclasses in manipulating human attention, emotion, and perspective. We're going way beyond standard lyrical technique today to uncover how you are pulled directly inside the story. You know, some rappers impress you with pure technical skill. Others just give you a great vibe. But Eminem frequently does something entirely different. He puts you directly in the shoes of the narrator. So why does it hit so hard? What is actually happening inside your brain when a song hits you heavier than you ever expected? Well, the answer lies in how his music completely bypasses the logical parts of your brain and directly targets your emotional processing centers. It's like this invisible architecture of intensity.
Section 1. Empathy and vulnerability. The emotional patterns of loss. Some of his most enduring songs are centered entirely on loss, regret, family struggles, and extreme autobiographical vulnerability. But here's the puzzle we have to solve. Why do listeners connect so deeply, so viscerally, to highly specific details about someone else's life? I mean, your life is completely different from his, right? You probably didn't grow up in the exact same circumstances, facing the exact same hyper-specific family turmoil. Yet when you listen, you feel the loss as if it were your own. It turns out the brain doesn't need your story to be identical to the artist's story. It needs an emotional pattern it recognizes. See, your brain is incredibly efficient at pattern recognition. When an artist uses extreme vulnerability to tell a story of abandonment or regret, they're providing a raw emotional framework. And your brain instantly maps its own feelings of loss or sadness right onto that framework. You aren't relating to the exact facts of his life. You're locking onto a universal psychological pattern. That is the true engine of empathy. But then, just when you're lulled into that deep empathetic state, he does something completely different. Section 2. The mechanics of aggression more than just anger. Now, this is a massive part of the Eminem formula, but it is deeply misunderstood. Most people think that an aggressive-sounding song just means the artist was simply furious in the recording booth. But sounding aggressive musically is an entirely different science. It's about psychoacoustics and deliberate vocal intensity, which actually triggers our fight-or-flight response. Your brain processes audio on two entirely separate tracks. On one side, we have what a voice says, the actual lyrics, the literal meaning of the words. But on the other side, we have how the voice behaves. This is the delivery, the rhythm, the sudden changes in loudness, the sharp, rapid articulation. When a song feels incredibly angry, your brain isn't just reacting to angry words, it's reacting to the physical behavior of the audio itself. To really understand this, let's track how tension is actually built in the studio. It almost always starts here, calm, a steady, predictable waveform. The vocal delivery is measured, the beat is steady, and your brain feels perfectly safe. Your guard is completely down. Eminem is unusually gifted at establishing this baseline of calm before entirely dismantling it. Then the shift happens. We enter the tense phase. He achieves this through intense consonant emphasis and incredibly rapid articulation. Think of the sharp, percussive sounds of the letters T, K, P. When those are fired off quickly and rhythmically, it literally builds psychological pressure inside the listener's brain. The volume might not even be rising yet, but the vocal behavior is signaling to your nervous system that something dangerous is coming. The tension becomes palpable. And then the release, explosive aggression. This sudden leap in loudness, combined with that built-up percussive tension, creates a visceral shockwave. It's a deliberate vocal manipulation. When these three stages, calm, tense, explosive, happen within the span of just a few seconds, it mimics the exact psychological pattern of a real-world confrontation. That is exactly why your heart beats faster. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth about why this hits so hard. Section 3. Shame and inner conflict. The allure of the uncomfortable. Sometimes the songs we simply cannot stop thinking about aren't the ones that make us feel good, confident, or happy. They're the songs steeped in guilt, contradiction, and first-person moral ambiguity. Why are we so drawn to narratives where the narrator is clearly flawed, making terrible decisions, or wrestling with deep shame? Well, it all comes down to one very sticky concept: unresolved emotion. This is a psychological state lacking closure, and human brains absolutely crave closure. When a song presents a story of self-conflict or moral ambiguity and refuses to tie it up with a neat, happy bow at the end, it forces your brain to fixate on it. Unresolved emotions become incredibly sticky. We remember the uncomfortable narratives because our subconscious is actively trying to figure out a solution that the song deliberately withheld from us. So, how do you deliver these incredibly uncomfortable, unresolved emotions without totally alienating the listener? Section 4, Alter Ego's Multiple Psychological Perspectives. Transitioning into multiple psychological perspectives is one of the most brilliant ways to create distance from trauma and darkness. You aren't always listening to one person, you're actually listening to a complex story being performed from several different minds inside the exact same track. By utilizing perspective switching, character narration, and cinematic storytelling, the brain's attention is absolutely locked in. You jump between a rational voice, an enraged alter ego, and a vulnerable inner child. It's exactly like watching a complex movie where the camera keeps cutting to different characters' points of view. This psychological distance allows the listener to safely engage with very dark themes because the alter ego creates a buffer. It's a performance, but a deeply revealing one. All of these elements are powerful, for sure, but they would fall totally flat without this next component. Section 5. The secret weapon, contrast. The human brain is hardwired to notice change. A voice that stays at exactly one emotional level, no matter how angry or sad it is, quickly becomes predictable. And once the brain predicts it, it tunes it out entirely. To maintain an intense emotional grip, you have to constantly change the emotional temperature. Eminem deploys contrast to keep your brain constantly guessing. He pivots from quiet to explosive in a single bar. He drops from lightning-fast flows to a slow, deliberate crawl. He places completely absurd slapstick humor right next to profound, uncomfortable darkness. He projects massive confidence and then immediately undercuts it with crippling vulnerability. By constantly bouncing between these extremes, the impact of each moment is magnified. Think about it. An explosive shout feels 10 times louder if it was immediately preceded by a quiet whisper. This contrast makes specific moments feel drastically bigger than they actually are. Okay, so we've looked at the individual pieces of the puzzle: empathy, vocal tension, unresolved emotion, alter egos, and contrast. Now let's see how they build into something even greater. Section 6. The ultimate psychological formula. This is the master architecture of that intense emotional impact we've been talking about. Here it is in 5 clear steps. 1. Storytelling that hooks the pattern recognition part of your brain. 2. Vocal control that manipulates your nervous system with psychoacoustics. 3. Contrast that ensures the emotional temperature is constantly shifting. 4. Vulnerability that taps into unresolved, sticky emotions. And 5. Unpredictability. As your brain tries to figure out what comes next, these combined elements continuously change the rules of the song. You aren't just hearing a track anymore. You're experiencing a carefully constructed psychological event. Which brings us right back to our original mystery from the very beginning of this explainer. Why are these songs so incredibly powerful? Why do they stay in the cultural memory and our personal playlists for decades, long after the initial shock value wears off? The reason is actually pretty simple. You feel it before you have time to analyze it. The strongest musical moments entirely bypass the logical, analytical part of your brain. Before you can even process the lyrics to decide if you agree with them, the vocal tension, the contrast, and the emotional patterning have already triggered a physical and emotional response in your body. It is an immediate, unanalyzed reaction. That is the true power of manipulating sonic psychology. And that's exactly why two people can put on the exact same song with the exact same lyrics and walk away feeling completely different things. It just depends on which emotional pattern their brain recognized first. So I want to leave you with this final thought to deeply analyze for yourself. What is the one song that hits you the absolute hardest? And more importantly, now that you know the architecture of how it works, why?